Hi, everybody. I'm Pam Fessler with NPR News, and I have spent most of this election season covering voting issues, voter ID laws, voter intimidation, voter fraud, all those issues, and the mechanics of voting. So I'm here today. We're going to try and answer some of your questions that you might have about just how to go vote and what to expect. And I'm joined by Meg Kelly, who is behind the camera, and she will be taking your questions if you put them in the comment section, and we will try to answer them as well as we can. So I just have a few things to start out with. We've got 6 more days to the election. So one thing that you probably already know, but if you don't, all the rules on elections differ from state to state, so it's very hard to say what the rules are for you. So one of the most important things you need to do before you go vote is to figure out what are the rules in your state or your county about how to go vote, where to go vote, when to go vote, and what your options are. So one of the first things I would suggest is that you go to either your state elections website, or there are a lot of other websites like Rock the Vote has one. You can click on it, go to your, they'll have, say, put in your state, you put in your state, you click on that, it might ask you what county you live in, you can click on that, and you can find out all kinds of information. I was able to go to mine, I live in Maryland, I was able to go to mine, I was able to find out not only where I was supposed to go to vote, I put in my address, I found out whether or not I was registered, that my registration is up to date, what hours the polling place was open, any kind of information. So that's the most important thing, is that you find out ahead of time what the rules are in your area. And the other important thing is to find out, are you registered to vote? If you haven't registered already, it's probably too late in most states, but there are actually a number of states, I'd say about 10 states, that allow you to register and vote on the same day. So you should find out if you live in one of those states. You also should check. Usually you can do it online. You can check and make sure that your voter registration is up to date, that they have the right address. As I say, you can do this usually on these websites. Other thing you might decide, do I want to vote early? Do I want to vote on election day? A lot of places have early voting, which means you can go, maybe not to your regular voting place, but a central voting location, and you can vote early. A lot of that's going on right now. I think almost 30 million people have voted already. And so you should find out if you have that option. It's going to start closing down early voting in a number of states over the next few days. So if you want to do that, you should do that probably in the next couple of days. The other thing, obviously, is to find out exactly where to go to vote and what the hours are if you're going to do it on election day. My state in Maryland has this cool little thing. I put in my address, my registration, my address. It not only tells me exactly where my voting place is, up pops a Google map that shows me exactly how to walk from my house or to drive from my house to the voting place. So maybe you'll have that. The other thing is figuring out how to vote. Every state, every locality has different. Some places have touchscreen voting machines. Some places have ballots that you have to fill out, the little holes or the little ovals next to the ballot. And some places have changed the voting method since the last time. So you should try and find out ahead of time how you are supposed to vote, who's on the ballot, what the ballot says. Often places will mail you a sample ballot ahead of time with directions on exactly how you should cast your ballot. So you should prepare yourself ahead of time, because one of the big problems people have on election day is long lines, if there's a big turnout, which there could be this year. And one of the ways that lines are shortened is if people are prepared, they kind of know who they're going to vote for ahead of time, and they actually know what to do. And those are some of the the tips that I have to try and make things a little easier. And, I know Meg probably has some other questions as well.
Yeah, a lot of folks are asking questions. One thing that we're seeing pretty commonly is people are wondering if your driver's license is from, another state, like mine's from Colorado, but I happen to live in the District of Columbia. Would I still be able to register at the same day at the polls if I had a bill or a piece of mail to prove that I'm a resident?
So the question is whether or not, if you say just moved to a new area and that you have a driver's license that's from out of state, are you still able to register and vote on the same day? Say you live in the District of Columbia, which does have same day voter registration. Again, it's completely different from state to state what the rules are. If you go online, you can find out exactly what it is that you need to produce to be registered. A lot of places you don't need the driver's license. You might only have to show your a bill, a local bill that you have at a local address, and that other ID maybe from another state. Sometimes it's a combination of documents that you have to show to be able to register. So if you do have an out-of-state driver's license, you should check with your election office and find out, will I be able to use it? It's really hard to say one way or the other you can or you can't. Some places you can, some places you can't.
Another question that we're seeing a bit of, people are wondering what you should do if you were supposed to vote as an absentee ballot and haven't for some reason received your ballot yet.
Well, again, the rules differ. Sorry to keep answering. So the question was whether or not you had requested an absentee ballot, but then for one reason or another you were not able to, and then showed up at the polling place, what would happen? So in most places what they will do is they will invalidate that absentee ballot, and they will allow you to vote in person at that place, but they will have to check to make sure that you in fact did not send in that absentee ballot. And what they might do, there's something called a provisional ballot that you can vote in polling places where there's a question that comes up. Say you come there and you thought you were registered to vote, you did in fact register to vote, but they don't have your name on the rolls. And they will not let you vote because your name is not on the rolls. There's something called a provisional ballot. They will let you vote that provisional ballot. They will put it in a special envelope and set it aside, and then they will count it if they are able to resolve the issue and in fact show that you are registered to vote. Probably within the day or so they will check. Those provisional ballots are really helpful if you run into any kind of problems at the poll. The one thing is you do need to follow up and make sure that it is in fact counted if it should be. The one thing that you can't do, obviously, is vote twice. You can't vote on an absentee ballot and then say, maybe it's not going to be counted, so I think I should go and vote again. And once in a while, people do, in fact, do that. They just don't trust the system, and they think, well, just to be sure, I'm going to vote again. And that is a felony.
So don't do that.
So don't do that. No, that would not be a good idea. That is illegal. That is voter fraud.
Which brings up actually something that we've heard a lot about this season, which is rigging. Is that something that people should be worried about? And are there things that they should look for when they go to the polls?
So the question is, we have heard a lot this election season about rigging, voting fraud, cheating. Is that something that you should be concerned about when you go to the polls? I mean, obviously, you want everything to work smoothly and your vote to be counted accurately and all the machines to work appropriately. We've also heard a lot about the potential for hacking of machines. There are many, many safeguards in place to prevent these things from happening. Most voting machines are not connected to in fact, almost all voting machines are not connected to the internet. We have a very, very dispersed voting system. You have all those little machines, each one sort of an independent unit. For somebody to hack the whole system to actually change the results of an election is incredibly far-fetched. That said, that doesn't mean that somebody might not try and throw, a kink into the system at some point with one machine or a couple of machines. Obviously, if you see anything that looks to you to be a problem, you should report it to the election official. Most of those election officials there are very, very committed to having a clean, smoothly run election. And if there's a problem with the machine or anything that you see that looks like a problem, they want to know about it. We've heard a little bit in early voting something that's called vote flipping, where people use touchscreen machines. They might press one candidate's name, but the other one lights up. And there have been accusations and allegations that this is the machine's been rigged, but for the most part, these vote flipping incidents occur with older equipment. The equipment needs to be calibrated, and sometimes the calibration is slightly off. So if you press one thing, the other thing lights up. But it does not actually cast the ballot. You always get a summary at the end before you press cast ballot. So if you see any problem like that, you should talk immediately to the election official, and they will either take that machine out of service or allow you to vote on a separate machine. The other thing that they find is a lot of times people think they're pressing one thing, but they're accidentally have their finger on the other. So anyways, those are the types of things. It's not really rigging, but it could be a problem with the machine. Immediately reported to the election official who's there.
So along the same lines, a few people have reported sort of increased police presence at their polling stations, or that there's some fears about intimidation at the polls this year. Could you just give voters some guidance around like what to look for and what we think may or may not happen?
So the question is that we've been hearing a lot in this election season about voter intimidation, poll watching, poll monitoring, calls for people to go watch the polls in certain areas of the country to make sure there's no cheating. First of all, I guess the one thing is all these allegations have been raised that there's widespread cheating at the polls. There really is no evidence that that in fact is the case or has ever been the case. There's always going to be one or two incidents here or there, but the thought that there's widespread efforts to influence the outcome of the election through cheating and fraud are just pretty much unfounded by the evidence or unsupported by the evidence. That said, there are a couple of processes in place to have people watch the elections. So in most voting places, there will be an observer or two, an outside observer, who will be, for the most part, will be sitting on the sideline just watching to make sure that everything seems to be going smoothly. And in a lot of places, it's one Republican, one Democrat, or sometimes a neutral observer. And they usually are trained. They are certified by the parties or by the candidates. And their job is basically to make sure that the process is going smoothly and fairly. If they see somebody who does look like they're voting twice, they would bring it to the attention of the election official. They're not supposed to interfere with voters at all. They are supposed to bring any problems that they see. They're either record them or bring them to the attention of the election official. Also, most places have laws that prohibit outside the election, the polling place, any kind of electioneering or people trying to pressure voters, and it really varies what that distance is. It could be 50 feet from the polling place, 100 feet. It could be even as much as 600 feet away from the polling place. So you shouldn't be intimidated or approached at all by anybody in that area unless they are sort of an official representative. That said, then there are the areas outside of those polling places. I mean, that kind of bubble around the election. And there it's a little murkier. Well, are we going to see groups of people, and there are some interest groups that say, oh, we're going to go and watch the polls and make sure we don't see people coming, and voting 2, 3, 4, or 5 times, which they say there's very little evidence that that happens. The laws are a little murkier what people outside those areas are allowed to do. But if they are clearly intimidating people or threatening them in any way, in a lot of places that would certainly be grounds for calling authorities. And we've already seen 1 or 2 incidents of that in the early voting. And for the most part, the election official comes out, tells the person to stop bothering the voters, and then they leave. There are also a lot of groups. There's something called Election Protection, which is a group of civil rights advocates. They've enlisted thousands of attorneys and thousands of volunteers to help monitor polling sites to make sure that there is not any intimidation of voters. So voters can often turn to those groups for any kind of assistance as well.
Awesome. So just one last question for you. For newer voters or folks who haven't been in there, people are just really excited about who they're voting for this season. What's the deal with selfies and the polling place? Can we do that or not?
That's a great question. It's can you do selfies in the election in the voting booth? Again, completely different rules in different states. Some places you are not allowed to take a picture inside the polling place. And that goes back to concerns that people were under pressure to vote in a particular way, and that if they took a picture of their ballot and then showed it to, whoever was pressuring them, maybe to get money in exchange for their vote, that this would aid that happening. But obviously, as Meg says, there's lots of people who are very excited about voting. They're proud of how they voted, and they want to advertise it. So a lot of places now are starting to allow voters to take selfies in the polling place. I'd say about a third of the states allow it. Again, go to your website. Check it out. If you can't find out the information on the website, you can also just call up the elections office. And I'm assuming that a lot of them will have signs outside that say whether or not you can take any pictures.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all we have from our Facebook audience. Do you have any final thoughts or last things you'd like to share?
Yeah, I guess the last thing I'd like to say, I've been covering this for a long, long time, and, we always hear these concerns before the election. Oh, is this going to happen with the machines? Is this going to happen? Is there going to be a problem? And there are always some problems, but inevitably, 99.9% of the voters have no problems at all. They don't have to wait on long lines. They have a really great experience. And I think people should keep that in the back of their minds. There may be some problems. We don't know what they're going to be. But for the most part, it's an easy and fulfilling experience for a lot of people. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us.